In the dead of winter, on the Eastern Front or high in the Alps, the cold wasn't just uncomfortable, it was lethal. Soldiers froze in their sleep, rifles jammed with ice, and breath turned to frost that coated their blankets. Yet somehow, day after day, entire divisions managed to sleep through nights that dropped to 40 below zero and still rise at dawn, ready to fight. They didn't have modern sleeping bags, electric heaters, or Gore-Tex layers. What they had was ingenuity, field-tested methods, old-world tricks, and hard-earned discipline that kept their hearts beating through the most brutal winters of World War II. Tonight, we're peeling back the frost to uncover how frontline troops actually slept without freezing to death, and how those same survival lessons can still save you in extreme cold today. The battle against cold was often harder than the enemy itself. During World War II, winter wasn't just a season, it was a second front. On the Eastern Front, temperatures plunged to minus 40 degrees Celsius. In the Ardennes, during the Battle of the Bulge, American troops endured weeks without proper winter gear. The German advance stalled partly because men couldn't sleep long enough to recover. The Soviets, by contrast, had studied how to fight and sleep in extreme cold. Their success was due not just to equipment, but to ancient fieldcraft that made survival possible. What few people realize is that soldiers didn't simply tough it out. They developed detailed routines to conserve warmth. Every minute spent in sleep was planned around minimizing heat loss from the ground, air, and sweat. They didn't rely on luck. They relied on systems. The first and most important rule was simple. Never sleep directly on the ground. The earth, especially when frozen, pulls body heat faster than cold air. Soldiers in every army, from the Red Army to the US infantry, learned to create insulating barriers between themselves and the soil. Soviet troops used evergreen boughs, straw, or even stacked firewood under their bedrolls. German soldiers layered pine needles and snow itself, packed hard enough to form an insulating platform. Snow, when compacted, actually traps air and slows heat loss. American GIs filled sandbags or ration sacks with dry grass or shredded paper to elevate their sleeping surface. Even an inch of insulation could mean the difference between frostbite and a few hours of real rest. If you ever find yourself camping in, freezing conditions, this principle still applies. Before you sleep, just take 10 minutes to gather dry leaves, boughs, or even a foam pad. Anything, really, that separates you from the cold ground. You lose most of your heat downward, not upward. A soldier's uniform could be his greatest enemy if it got wet. Sweat trapped in cotton or wool froze fast, turning garments into, ice shells. Veterans learned to strip down or loosen gear before sleeping to let their body regulate temperature. Germans used layered wool and field coats lined with rabbit fur. The Soviets had quilted Telogryka jackets and Valenki felt boots that breathed just enough to stay dry overnight. One trick that saved countless lives was drying socks and mittens on the body itself. Troops would tuck damp socks between their shirt and skin, letting body heat dry them slowly without freezing. Another technique was sleeping in rotation. While half the squad slept, the others kept a small fire alive to warm boots and clothing before the next shift. In your own cold weather setup, The lesson is clear. Dry gear is warm gear. Always remove damp layers before resting and trap heat, not sweat. Individual survival wasn't always enough. Soldiers who slept alone in open terrain often froze before morning. The armies that survived longest in extreme cold, like the Soviets and Finnish, relied on collective warmth. In dugouts and bunkers, they packed in tight, sharing body heat and reducing exposed air. Soviet zemlyankas were partially underground shelters lined with logs and sealed with mud and snow. Inside, they built crude stoves out of tin or brick, vented through the roof with scavenge pipe. A small candle or embers from a stove could raise the temperature by 10 degrees, enough to prevent frostbite. American troops in the Ardennes built foxhole covers from tarp, snow and branches, sealing in warmth with 2 men per hole. The Germans, often short on fuel, used the buddy system, sleeping back to back under greatcoats and sharing blankets. It wasn't comfortable, but it was effective. You know, modern survivalists can still use this principle. A simple lean-to or snow trench with 2 people inside, well, it retains warmth exponentially better than sleeping solo. In Arctic survival training, even today, soldiers are taught to use buddy warmth as a last resort, an age-old lesson from those frozen fronts. While fire is the obvious heat source, it wasn't always practical near the front lines. Smoke and light drew sniper fire. Instead, soldiers used heat banks, burying small coals or hot stones beneath their bedrolls, sometimes wrapped in cloth or sand to avoid burns. German and Soviet engineers developed compact stoves like the Esbit and Sawyer stove, small, smokeless devices that could heat rations and warm a shelter quietly. When fires were impossible, soldiers relied on their metabolism. They ate fatty rations before sleep, bacon, lard, chocolate, to fuel internal heat production through the night. You can still use this trick, you know. Before bedding down in the cold, eat something high in fat or carbohydrates to stoke your internal furnace. It's not about comfort. It's about energy management, a lesson those men learned the hard way. Rest in wartime wasn't guaranteed, so when soldiers did get a chance, they treated it as a survival task. Positions were rotated, gear was prepped, and sleeping times were enforced in shifts. One man would bank coals, while another monitored frost on rifle bolts. In sub-zero cold, a man could fall asleep and never wake up if left unchecked. The Red Army's manuals even included cold sleep protocols. Shake awake your comrade every hour, check for numbness in fingers, and, well, ensure no part of the body contacts bare metal or frozen ground. The Wehrmacht issued similar warnings, stressing, you know, discipline in rest. It wasn't bravery that kept men alive, it was method. The way World War II soldiers survived freezing nights wasn't luck. It was a combination of preparation, teamwork, and a deep understanding of how the body interacts with the environment. They turned natural materials, human cooperation, and field logic into survival systems still relevant for anyone venturing into cold wilderness. If you camp, hunt, or train outdoors, remember what they knew. Control moisture, insulate from the ground, feed your body heat, and honestly, Never sleep alone in the cold. These lessons, forged in the misery of war, remain timeless. For more forgotten survival knowledge and wartime ingenuity, subscribe to In the Beginning and share this video with fellow history buffs and preppers. The wisdom that kept soldiers alive in the frozen trenches of World War II might one day keep you alive too.